I will tell you that most architects find it beneath them to talk about money. They think it's unprofessional, especially time payment. But the reality is, you have to be paid. Cash flow is the lifeblood of your firm. We're going to talk about this later. I would say, up until about 4 years ago, it seemed that most of our clients were really busy. In fact, they were so busy it felt like they were running at 100 miles an hour. Okay? But the reality is, when we really look deep down inside, I think most firms still had difficulty managing the three legs of the stool. I think a lot of firms were possibly successful in spite of themselves, not because of what they were doing. There are three types of firms that I see out there. And there are three types of firms when we started going to this economic cycle that we recognized. The first group of firm was basically those firms that were going to go out of business. Those firms that didn't have the work, or worse yet, that weren't being paid. And unfortunately, we've had some clients that have been forced out of business because they had tons of work, but they weren't being paid. The second group of firms are those firms that had some work, but they've had to cut back on their vision in terms of where they're going in the future. They're operating in highly competitive marketplaces. Everything is very commoditized, and it's real challenging to survive. The biggest dangers in this industry, as we all know, is the fact that we have lost and will probably lose more people. It is very difficult to find quality people in good times and bad, and I think that's a huge, huge danger for the industry in terms of the first two groups. In terms of those first two groups. The third group of firms are those that are investing in the future. The third group of firms are those that basically are committed to an ongoing culture of learning. These are the firms that understand that they have to be more effective in terms of responding to clients. These are the firms that understand when there's change, that constantly learning reduces the amount of stress involved. They understand that talent makes a difference. Talent makes a difference. They also understand by constantly learning and possibly growth, if that's possible, you're able to retain and attract new employees and the key people. So the question is, as we look at the third group, what are they doing or where do they start in terms of defining how they become successful? The place they start is their clientele, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about, your clientele. Okay, project procurement. A year ago I met a firm, 68 employees, had more work than needed to do with 30% margins, and were paid on average 24 days. Can you imagine that? They're paid on average 24 days, almost unheard of. The reason being is they were absolutely ruthless about who they're doing business with. A friend of mine was hired by an internationally recognized architect about 5 years ago as a management consultant. The two of them are sitting in a room, and in a conference room, and the phone rings, and it's a prince or sheik from somewhere in the Middle East. The sheik says, "Hey, how are you?" Apparently they met someone in the past, and they start talking, and the sheik says, "I am really excited, we're about to get going on this project. I have this thing and it's great." The architect turns to the sheik and says, "Well, let me go over my rules first. First of all, number one, minimum size is $30 million in construction, and I, as the architect, or my firm, has all final say on all design, texture, and color decisions." And then the sheik started to backpedal. And after about 2 minutes, the architect turns to him and said, "You know what? We spoke about this 10 years ago, and I guess you're still not ready to work with me." Click, and he hung up the phone. Now, I am not saying that's what you should be doing, and I'm not saying that you should be turning work away. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that, number one, you always want to be strategic in terms of who you're doing business with and the projects that you're working on, okay? The second thing is you absolutely have to recognize the fact that when you're pursuing a project, you are investing your time and resources in terms of going after a project. It is not uncommon for some of our clients to invest a week's worth of time putting together or responding to an RFP, okay? The reason why firms are profitable is because they are very clear about who they do business with. So let's talk about what that's like. Well, if you like your client, you have fewer problems, the projects are interesting, they're profitable, value added, how do you feel? Inspired and motivated. A meaningful career, right? That's exactly why you went into architecture. You want to do good projects, you want to work with good people. Who here has ever had a bad client? Yeah. If you want to have a great sense of confidence, fire your bad client. You'll feel how great it feels. All right, but let's say bad clients. You don't like your clients, they get pushed around, not particularly profitable projects. You find out after the fact the projects are uninspiring. How do you feel? anxiety, disappointment, frustrated career. It is really difficult to be an architect, especially in this environment. But you need to have standards. But also, you have to be very strategic in terms of who you're going to do business with. So the first issue is, the first line is project acquisition. In other words, are you choosing them or are they choosing you? The second one is the RFP world. Who here is on the RFP world? It's tough. It's all about price, right? And if they don't like your price, it's someone else. And if price is your only leverage point, it's a really, really frustrating place to be. So project procurement, go-no-go strategy, it equals client alignment and project selection. This is what makes your jobs profitable.